Hi, my sister won't stop whining. How does he get away with it? How does he get away with it? She's talking about Donald Trump. And I was talking to my friend John Ross, great comedy writer, John Ross. We were laughing at Trump. Trump had some amazing rallies over the weekend. They're funny. There was a rally last week where Trump found a fly, and he said, "Oh, this must be from the illegal immigrants." And John and I were talking about it. We were laughing at how horrible it was. And one of us said, it's something a club comic would try to pass off as material. If Donald Trump were a club comic and a fly flew by him and he said it must be from the illegal immigrants, if that were in a comedy club, some of us would roll our eyes, some of us would laugh. But here's the thing. Trump is like a really bad club comic, and nobody would hire him with this material. He's too offensive. Think about it. The man who couldn't even play the Chuckle Hut in Fremont, California, has a chance of being president again. This is where we're at in the United States. Not particularly funny. So my sister will not stop whining all weekend. How does he do it? Why does he get away with it? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about on today's show. How and why Donald Trump gets away with this. She says, why is everybody so afraid of him? Well, they are. And she asks, why won't the Republicans stand up to him? Well, they can't. On today's show, it's not Trump. How does he get away with it? There are dark forces behind this man who have to see Donald Trump become president because there are trillions and trillions of dollars on the line for these people. He's their useful idiot. You all know that. Now, Elon Musk last night wrote the following, and you ask me if you think he believes this. He writes, very few Americans realize that if Trump is not elected, this will be the last election. He goes on to say, far from being a threat to democracy, he is the only way to save it. Now, do you believe Elon Musk thinks that? He has trillions of dollars. He and his buddies have trillions of dollars at stake. Elon Musk goes on to write, moreover, the Biden-Harris administration has been flying, quote unquote, asylum seekers who are fast-tracked to citizenship directly into swing states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Arizona. It is, he goes on to say, a surefire way to win every election. America then becomes a one-party state and democracy is over. Do you think Elon Musk believes that Biden and Harris are flying asylum seekers, migrants, and fast-tracking their citizenship so they can vote in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Arizona? Do you think he actually believes that? No. He is part, as the owner of Twitter, who, according to the New York Times, 1/3 of what Elon Musk tweeted last week were lies, verifiable lies. He is setting the groundwork, setting the table for the stolen election myth. This is the plan. Elon Musk is now saying Biden and Harris are fast-tracking migrants, giving them citizenship so they can vote in swing states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Arizona. So people say to me, why are you so optimistic? Well, I'm optimistic that Kamala Harris is going to win the popular vote and the Electoral College. She cannot win the House of Representatives. If this election gets thrown into the House of Representatives, which is the Republican plan, because of the way each state is weighted, there are more red states than blue states, Donald Trump will be elected president. That is the plan. That was the plan in 2020, and it's the plan in 2024. To get this into the House of Representatives, and you do that by convincing enough people that there was sufficient election fraud and voter fraud that the Supreme Court has to decide what to do. And this Supreme Court, with its 6-3 Republican majority, will send it right into the House of Representatives, where Donald Trump is guaranteed to win. So once again, I am very optimistic that Kamala Harris wins the Electoral College and the popular vote, but they know they're going to lose, and they're already planting the seeds of the great migration myth, that the migrants stole the election for Kamala Harris. More on this later on. 36 days until you cast your ballot. More on this later. Well, here in the United States, we're picking up the pieces after Hurricane Helene smashed into the Gulf Coast, killing at least 70 people, making it the deadliest storm in nearly 2 years. Officials warn the body count will increase as they make their way through the rubble. 3.2 million Americans as far north as Indiana are still without power this morning. South Carolina seems to have been the hardest hit. South Carolina made up nearly 32% of those 3.2 million Americans still without power. Helene hit Florida as a Category 4. By the time it began heading north, parts of Kentucky and Tennessee saw the worst flooding in nearly 100 years. Some parts the worst in 300 years. While not the deadliest on record, Helene could end up being one of the costliest. AccuWeather is now predicting this morning that the physical toll from the hurricane could be in excess of $100 billion, making it one of the top 4 most expensive storms ever. $100 billion. Imagine instead of that $100 billion, and the next 100 billion from the next storm. Imagine if all those billions were pumped into a Green New Deal. Senator Bernie Sanders in AOC this year introduced legislation that would convert all public housing into carbon neutral buildings over the next 10 years. It would cost $23 billion a year. Over the next 10 years, it would create 280,000 union jobs, and by combating greenhouse emissions, it would remove the equivalent of 1.3 million cars from our nation's roads. Not only that, public housing would save billions on its electricity and heating bills. But somehow we can't afford that. That's childish and doesn't make sense. President Biden, meanwhile, has been forced to declare emergencies in Florida, Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, and Georgia, making federal dollars as well as FEMA relief available. Except for Georgia, those states traditionally send lawmakers to Washington who trivialize climate change, and they support legislation to make cuts in both disaster relief and emergency preparedness. Las Vegas is now going 104 straight days with temperatures above 100 degrees. About 20 million Americans this morning are living under a heat advisory, and it's almost October 1st. This is the mop-up for September 30th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. We are now 34 days away from the presidential election, okay? Are you registered to vote? Do you have a neighbor who isn't registered to vote? Do you want to make sure that neighbor is registered to vote? Are you phone banking for Senator Jon Tester in Montana? Have you called the Democratic Party? Or are you a pot-smoking, wine-slugging, lazy sack of human excrement who thinks their country's future is out of your hands? Are you a worthless fatalist? Maybe you like the panic attacks and depression that come with the sense of dread, thinking you have no control. Or you could get involved over the next 35 days. The fight never ends, okay? It won't end after November 5th. Donald Trump, the fight just begins for Donald Trump on November 5th. This fight never ends. As Neil Young says, rust never sleeps. You never stop fighting because the other side never stops fighting. As long as there are rich and powerful people in this country who are terrified of paying their fair share of taxes, they will divide us, they will lie to us, and more importantly, they will wear us down. They will terrify us and wear us down and make us believe, what's the point? There are trillions of dollars on the line in this election, from billionaires not wanting to be taxed to ExxonMobil wanting to stop the move away from fossil fuels. This election, yeah, it's about democracy because no democratically elected government would allow hurricanes of this magnitude without crushing the fossil fuel industry. No democratically elected government would allow billionaires to have so much say in the affairs of state, while at the same time paying so little in taxes and wages and creating so few jobs. These jobs are mostly created by the stimulus packages that Joe Biden has been passing. So what are you doing for America? Not just on November 5th, but on November 6th. And for the rest of your time on this planet, what are you doing for America? In politics, there is no such thing as an innocent bystander, only guilty ones. If you're an American citizen, you owe it to yourself and this country to take care of the 14 million Americans who are not yet citizens and are living under a cloud of terror thanks to Donald Trump's phony migrant crisis. Get to work. If you don't know what to do, call the Democratic Party. There's no greater calling than improving the lives of others, and history has shown us that the most efficient, the most cost-effective way to cure disease, lift people out of poverty, to educate and protect is through electing excellent politicians. Good government is the only answer. Not philanthropy, not charity, good government. Your time and money is better spent working for and electing progressive candidates locally and nationally. Good government is the answer. It's the only answer, not the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Government, good government. And the only way you get good government is by supporting big government progressive candidates. When you hear of these massive hurricanes, where's the United Way? Where's the Red Cross? Where are all these charities that pay their CEOs 6 to 7 figure salaries a year? In Florida last week, the Red Cross opened 50 shelters, just 50 shelters to accommodate 12 million people in Florida without power right after Helene hit. 50 shelters. You really think the Red Cross steps up without getting help from FEMA? Who are you going to call when there's a natural disaster? You're going to call the Red Cross, the United Way, or FEMA, or the government? Let me read you a couple of salaries that the American Red Cross pays as of 2 years ago, okay? $781,120 a year to Clifford Holtz. He's the chief operating officer. $751,789 to Chris Haruta. He's the president of biomedical services for the Red Cross. $723,696 to Sean Gilmore, Chief Transformation Officer for the Red Cross. $640,483 to Gail McGovern, President and CEO of the Red Cross. $629,954 to Brian Roa, Chief Financial Officer of the Red Cross. So they have a chief operating officer and a chief financial officer. The list goes on and on over at the Red Cross. 10 other Red Cross executives below the ones I just mentioned 10 others make anywhere between $300,000 to $500,000 a year. So I don't want to hear about government waste. I don't want to hear about faith-based charities or how any charity gets critical care to Americans in need. It's FEMA. It's the federal government. But I just believe private charity and faith-based organizations can raise money and or distribute federal dollars more effectively than the government can. No, you're led to believe that because people get rich off faith-based charities. People get rich off the Red Cross. Nobody's getting rich off FEMA. Unless Dick Cheney is vice president and he's throwing billions to his old company Halliburton to build trailers to house Hurricane Katrina victims. The Republicans do not want to solve climate catastrophe because they don't believe in preventative medicine. There's more money to be made dispensing statins and weight loss drugs than there is in writing an agriculture bill that tackles heart disease and obesity at the source. Who gets rich if our agriculture bill doesn't fund the dairy industry, the cattle industry? The cattle industry gets rich, and the people who manufacture statins and all these new weight loss drugs get rich. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Don't forget to share and leave a comment. I love reading your comments. Or, tell me something stupid about how the Red Cross did such a great job when your cousin needed a place to stay during Hurricane Andrew. Please flood me with anecdotal evidence about how great the Red Cross is, what a great job they did in Haiti. Please, I want to hear how great the Red Cross and the United Way is. Also, subscribe to my channel and my newsletter. Well, this Tuesday night, it's a battle between good and evil as Coach Waltz takes on race-baiting, opportunistic infection, J.D. Vance. Join me and my friends as we watch the vice presidential debate and discuss it afterwards. I will record an audio version of my podcast after the debate. Doors open at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Debate starts at 9 p.m. Eastern. Then the discussion follows. My guests are you, the listeners. I look forward to chatting with you, my listeners. No cameras. No cameras. Just me. You'll see me, unfortunately, and you'll see the debate. But as for you, the listeners, I'm only interested in what you have to say. So we'll talk in the chat room. You can ask questions in the Q&A. And if you raise your hand to speak, I will only hear your voice. I don't want to know what you look like. It's bad enough that you know what I look like. One of the reasons these watch parties are different and more successful than our previous ones is you can be naked. The camera is off. In the past, the camera was always a distraction. And when people talk, I want to focus on what they have to say. And one of the reasons, many reasons, people hate Zoom, especially for work, is your boss makes you turn on the camera because he wants to snoop on you, or she wants to snoop on you, or they want to snoop on you. They don't trust you. In a work situation, you should be judged on your ideas, what you think and what you have to say, not what you look like when you're expressing yourself. If you run a business and you use Zoom, my suggestion is hold the meetings without the cameras on. They'll take less time. Unless you don't want the meetings to take less time. Unless you're an alpha dog who likes to hold people captive and you like to, that your only purpose in life is mid-level management is to hold Zoom meetings that go on for hours where nothing gets done. Anyway, I'm in a good mood this morning. I'm charging a $3 registration fee. I know some people don't have the money, but Zoom webinars aren't free, and $3 keeps the MAGA morons out. There's limited space. If we do more events like this and we fill up the room, I'll buy more space so we can let more people in. By the way, your registration fee is secured by PayPal, which means you don't need to join PayPal. PayPal accepts all credit cards They process your payment to make sure your information remains private. I don't want your credit card information. That's why I'm using PayPal. You don't want me to know what your credit card number is. Okay? All right. I hope to see you all Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern with no clothes on. Just show up naked. It doesn't matter. For more information on this, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. You can get the registration link there, or go to davidfeldmanshow.com. You can get the registration link there, or just check the description of this episode. There's a registration link there. Interesting news this morning. The Associated Press reports that a majority of Hispanic voters support a woman's right to choose. This despite Republican efforts in the past decade to portray Hispanics as an increasingly religious and conservative voting bloc. Well, they are, but abortion doesn't factor into this. According to the Associated Press, 60% of Protestant Hispanics and 2/3 of Hispanic Catholics say they believe Congress should pass legislation guaranteeing a woman's right to an abortion. The Associated Press says 40% of Hispanic voters identify as Catholic, 33% as Protestant or Christian, and roughly 25% have no religious affiliation. According to a new study conducted by the nonprofit Pregnancy Justice, 210 women were prosecuted for a pregnancy-related crime in the 12 months immediately following the 2022 Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. According to The Guardian, Wendy Bach, a University of Tennessee law professor and the report's principal investigator, Wendy Bach said her study is just scratching the surface, and she says she thinks the number of prosecutions is much higher than 210. The Guardian reports that pregnancy-related prosecutions take place in states with strict anti-abortion laws, and nearly 200 of those prosecutions stem from laws treating the fetus as a human being and thereby accusing pregnant women of child abuse or child endangerment. 3/4 of the women prosecuted for pregnancy-related crimes in 2022 through 2023, 3/4 of those women live below the poverty line. Even before Roe was overturned, back in 2021, according to The Guardian, one Alabama woman was arrested after being caught taking methamphetamine while she was 2 months pregnant. The Guardian says she spent her entire pregnancy behind bars, forced eventually to deliver her baby alone in a prison shower stall with no medical supervision. Alone in a prison shower stall with no medical supervision, for the safety of the baby. New video surfaced from a Senate hearing where Senator J.D. Vance warned that laws forcing parents to place their babies in car seats has resulted in 100,000 fewer babies being born in this country. During a 2023 Commerce, Science, and Transportation hearing, Senator Vance said, quote, "American families aren't having enough children." Wait, I want to read the rest of that quote, but hang on. Senator Vance said American families aren't having enough children? Well, that's true, which is why there isn't a migrant crisis. See, two things can't be true. You can't tell us the country is being flooded with migrants and that American families aren't having enough children. We have a population implosion. I've gone over this for 2 years now. Anyway, he continues. This is about car seats, resulting in 100,000 fewer babies being born. What, because he's a hillbilly, I guess if there's a car seat back there, where are you going to conceive the baby? All J.D. Vance's buddies were conceived in the back seat of a car. The car seat gets in the way. Yes, hillbillies. I'm mocking hillbillies. This is what he said. Quote, I think there's evidence that some of the things that we're doing to parents is driving down the number of children that American families are having. Yeah, like not increasing the minimum wage, not building low-income housing. You think that might have something to do with it, you prick, you stupid prick? He goes on to say, in particular, there's evidence that the car seat rules that we've imposed, which of course I want kids to drive in car seats. He says they've driven down the number of babies born in this country by over 100,000. So as we think about how to make kids safe here, I think we should do it in a way that's accommodating to American families, unquote. In other words, J.D. Vance, he wants kids to be in car seats, but making it the law, handing out tickets, that's what's keeping us from having 100,000 babies born in America. That's why we're having a population implosion. There's too much bureaucratic red tape. Honey, I want to have unprotected sex with you and bring life into this world, but those damn car seats are just so burdensome. You know, I could get fined $500 for not putting our future baby in a car seat. We can't have kids. Kamala Harris said she would support, imagine the balls on this prick, saying American families aren't having enough children, and at the same time demonizing the Haitian immigrants, that they have to be thrown out. What's that about? Hatred of black people? That's what it's about. Hatred of black people. What he's saying is white people aren't having enough children. It's all part of the Great Replacement Theory, which Elon Musk is parroting now, right? All the migrants coming into the country, bussed in by Kamala Harris to vote in the swing states. Well, Kamala Harris said she would support eliminating the filibuster in the Senate in order to pass legislation enshrining Roe into law. The filibuster is a Jim Crow-era Senate rule that allows the minority party to block passage of a bill unless there's a 60-vote majority to overturn the filibuster. According to Senate rules, there's nothing in the Constitution about the filibuster. It's just a Senate rule to protect slave states, to protect segregation. According to Senate rules, certain bills can't be filibustered, like a budget resolution can't be filibustered, or a Supreme Court nomination. That's recent, that they got rid of the filibuster for judicial appointments. It has been suggested that the filibuster be lifted on bills expanding voting as well as reproductive rights. Harris says she would support waiving the filibuster to enshrine a woman's right to choose. No comment on waiving it for voting rights, or she refused to comment as to whether or not she would support lifting the filibuster on any climate action bill. Is there a problem with the climate that needs immediate attention? I'm not aware of that. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who was a Democrat, recently became an independent and is retiring not too soon from the Senate this year, announced he will not endorse Kamala Harris for president. Why? Because she is willing to lift the filibuster to guarantee a woman's right to choose. Manchin said, quote, "Shame on her." Shame on her, says the senator, whose daughter should be in prison for price-fixing EpiPens. Another show. Manchin said, shame on her. She knows the filibuster is the holy grail of democracy. The holy grail of democracy. You mean the thing Southern Democrats invented to make sure segregation remained untouched throughout the first half of the 20th century? That's the holy grail of democracy. All the filibusters that Southern segregationists used to make sure that black people couldn't vote, All those bills to expand voting rights for black people that were filibustered in the first half of the 20th century. The filibuster is the holy grail of democracy. Manchin went on to say, the filibuster is, quote, the only thing that keeps us talking and working together. If she gets rid of that, then this would be the House on steroids. I want the House on steroids. I would like to see the Senate move as quickly as the House of Representatives. That way, elections would actually have real-world consequences. We would have reams of legislation passed, and all the major decisions in America wouldn't be made by the effing Supreme Court. We don't have a democracy anymore because we have institutional gridlock in Washington, D.C. Because of the filibuster, Congress can't respond to a national crisis because of the filibuster. And this is why everything gets decided by the courts, right? The president can't get anything passed, so he issues an executive order, and then the Supreme Court decides whether or not there's an eviction crisis. The Supreme Court decides whether or not student debt should be forgiven because of the filibuster. We put everything into the hands of 9 Supreme Court justices because they don't trust the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the president to respond to what's going on. Abortion, we had abortion because of the Supreme Court. Same-sex marriage. We have same-sex marriage because of the Supreme Court. Imagine, Joe Biden is the most consequential president since FDR. That's what Bernie said. But imagine what Biden could have accomplished his first 2 years in office when he had both houses of Congress and there would be no filibuster. People say, but what about Trump? What if, God forbid, Trump becomes president and we have both houses of Congress being Republican? Imagine what would happen without a filibuster. I say let it happen. To me, it's like hate speech. The solution to bad speech is more speech. And the solution to bad legislation is more legislation. Let a Republican-controlled Congress and president pass all the legislation they threaten to pass. Okay? See how many Republican presidents and members of Congress the American people will ever elect again if these lying miscreants in the Republican Party actually enacted any of the laws they threatened to enact, like a national abortion ban, like overturning Obamacare. How many times did they vote on overturning Obamacare, but realized we better not overturn it because we'd kill everyone? How about gutting Social Security? They do that secretly. I say get rid of the filibuster and let's see a Republican president with a Republican Congress pass the laws they always threaten to pass. And better yet, let's see a Democratic president with a Democratic Congress pass the laws they promised to pass without having the filibuster to blame for not passing the PRO Act, raising the minimum wage, Medicare for all. Get rid of the filibuster. It's called pivoting, right? You pass a piece of legislation that isn't working. With no filibuster, you come back and you change it without the effing Supreme Court deciding. That's what getting rid of the filibuster does. You pass a stupid law. A year later, you go, well, that didn't work. Time to appeal that. Pass something better. Former Arizona Republican Jeff Flake, former Arizona Republican Senator Jeff Flake, who quit politics during the Trump administration, endorsed Kamala Harris for president. Good on him. Good on him. I mean that. In 2018, Flake said he was on the fence when it came to voting for Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination. He was on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he decided to vote for Kavanaugh, saying he didn't believe Christine Blasey Ford's testimony, where she accused Kavanaugh of sexual assault. He said, Jeff Flake said, it wasn't convincing enough. But he's endorsing Kamala Harris. Flake, where are we? Flake is a former senator from Arizona. Up until recently, I think last month, he served as Joe Biden's ambassador to Turkey. Polling averages in Arizona now show Donald Trump leading Kamala Harris by 2 points. Well, Biden won Arizona by a few tenths of a point in 2020, and Arizona is expected to be just as close. While Trump has consistently been leading Harris in the polling averages, keep in mind Proposition 139, Arizona's right to an abortion initiative, will be on the ballot in November. And much more importantly, Congressman Ruben Gallego, Democrat, is running against the divisive election denier Kari Lake. Throughout the year, Gallego has consistently led Kari Lake. The most recent Fox News poll shows Gallego beating Kari Lake by 14 percentage points. There's your ground game. In Arizona, Trump's ground game is Charlie Kirk knocking on doors with Turning Points USA. Charlie Kirk cannot compete with Ruben Gallego, who is now leading. He's been leading her all year. The latest poll out of Fox, 14 points. It is mathematically impossible for a Senate candidate down ballot to be leading by 14 points and on the upper tier of the ballot for ticket splitting to be that big that Donald Trump would win Arizona. It's impossible. It is impossible if Ruben Gallego is beating the odious Kari Lake by these margins. It's impossible for Donald Trump to win Arizona. Retiring Utah Senator and 2012 Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney has said he will not be voting for Donald Trump and he refused to endorse Kamala Harris. Why? In an interview with Atlantic Magazine, Mitt Romney said he would like to endorse Kamala Harris, but he fears for his safety and the safety of his own family. Ever since voting to convict Trump in the second impeachment trial, Senator Romney has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on his own personal protection for himself and his family. And he can afford that protection. So can his family, considering the hundreds of millions of dollars Romney made at Bain Capital. That's a private equity firm that buys up companies and then saddles those companies with the debt Bain Capital incurs to purchase the companies. They pay off that debt by raiding pensions, selling off real estate, and firing most of the workers. That's what private equity does. That's how Mitt Romney made his hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's what J.D. Vance did before he ran for Senate. They find a perfectly good company that's worth more broken apart than kept together. But Romney can't bring himself, doesn't feel it's safe enough for him and his family if he endorses Kamala Harris. Mitt Romney dodged the Vietnam draft and once again just can't seem to bring himself to fight for his country. He cannot bring himself to fight for his country. But it's okay for black prosecutors like Fani Willis, Letitia James, and Alvin Bragg to put their lives and their families' lives on the line with just a government salary in the pursuit of justice. But Mitt Romney won't endorse Kamala Harris because he's afraid something bad will happen to him and his family. He was a feckless prick in 2012, and he's a feckless prick in 2024. I can't think of a more important reason for Mitt Romney to endorse Kamala Harris. The single most important reason to endorse Kamala Harris is because you're afraid if you don't, you and your family won't be safe. This is how Mitt Romney will go down in history. I voted to remove Trump from office during the impeachment trial of 2021, and that's enough. That's good. That was my patriotic moment. Some of you are too young to remember Mitt Romney when he ran in 2012 for president. Besides being an inveterate liar, he's a coward. He was always a coward who had zero courage of his convictions. Obamacare was Romney care. And he didn't even have the courage to support his own health care plan. Look, I'm a coward. That's why I didn't go into politics. Don't run for president if you're a coward. Don't become a U.S. senator unless you're willing to put some of it on the line for your country, especially when you can afford all the private security you and your worthless family needs. Axios this morning is detailing Donald Trump's plans to call the 2024 presidential election results into question. I was over this at the beginning of the show, and I will continue to remind you of the plan. It is the same plan as 2020. Create so much doubt, create so much confusion, manufacture a crisis, convince so many Americans there was election fraud, convince them that millions and millions of migrants voted in swing states, convince enough that the Supreme Court has to decide the election by throwing it into the House of Representatives, where because each state gets one vote, and there are more red states than blue states, Donald Trump will be elected president. Look at this map. Look at my worst case scenario map. That's a sea of red, even though Kamala Harris wins the popular vote and the electoral college, there's a sea of red there. There are more red states than blue states. Each one gets one vote. That's what Donald Trump wants. That's what he wanted in 2020. That's what he wants in 2024. He wants the House of Representatives to decide our next president the way they did in 1876. So when people say, why are you so confident? I am confident. I'm confident that Kamala Harris is going to win the Electoral College. I'm confident she's going to win the popular vote. I have no idea how dark the forces are behind Donald Trump, people with trillions of dollars on the line, people like Elon Musk, who are willing to sow so much doubt about fictitious migrants voting in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, that the Supreme Court throws it into the House of Representatives. And I am confident that if it gets thrown into the House of Representatives, Donald Trump becomes president. That I'm confident of. Axios reports that Republican groups have already set the stage, planting the seed by filing 100 lawsuits challenging election laws they say encourage voter fraud. Axios reports that Trump is already challenging overseas balloting, calling American military and citizens casting ballots overseas untrustworthy. Trump is accusing the post office of incompetence, saying the post office will be unable to deliver absentee ballots, which he calls fraudulent. And of course, now he's claiming the reason Democrats voted against his SAVE Act is because the Democrats plan to bus millions of migrants into the country, naturalize them, make them citizens, and have them vote for Kamala Harris. I just read you what Elon Musk said. The SAVE Act would make it illegal for non-citizens to vote, even though it already is illegal for them to vote. And there is not a single shred of evidence of non-citizens ever voting. In fact, at a rally in Wisconsin on Saturday, Trump let slip that he has zero evidence of migrants voting. But he said, hey, it's just common sense. We know that they do. He even shows his hand and says, I have no evidence that migrants are ever voting, but it's common sense that they are. The New York Times also reports that Republicans have filed 90 election-related lawsuits, 10 less. The Times says the Republicans are now trying to lay down a predicate for their false narrative that the 2024 presidential election results can't be trusted. What we're going to see, and I'm a broken record on this, unless this is a blue tsunami, unless all of us work harder, this is what to expect, okay? Mike Johnson, the speaker, will announce that he's concerned about troubling reports of voter fraud. He'll make that announcement on November 6th, day after Election Day. He will then ask Jim Jordan, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, to hold hearings, the same way the House Oversight Committee just started holding hearings to determine whether or not Coach Walz is a Manchurian candidate. Okay? Jim Jordan will hold hearings on migrants voting in key battleground states. Doesn't matter that there's no evidence. It will sow just enough doubt that the entire Republican Congress will refuse to certify the election on January 6th. At least that's the plan. Remember, this isn't only about Donald Trump. This is about trillions of dollars at stake. We're talking about the fossil fuel industry terrified of Kamala Harris and the Democrats putting them out of business. We're talking about billionaires like Elon Musk, billionaires who know that Trump's tax cuts for the richest 1% expire in 2025, and Joe Biden promised he's going to let them expire. Donald Trump said he's going to make those tax cuts deeper. We're talking about crazy apostolic Christians who think abortion is murder. We're talking about a majority of Republicans who believe this is a battle between good and evil, and who say in a battle between good and evil, democracy doesn't matter, neither does violence. That's what actual polling shows, that a majority of Republicans believe this election is a battle between good and evil, and they don't worry about democracy if it's a battle between good and evil. This is so much bigger than Donald Trump. At the top of the show, I was mentioning my conversation with my sister. She was saying, how does he get away with it? Well, who's behind him? This is so much bigger than Donald Trump. The same way the Supreme Court handing the election to George W. Bush in 2000 was so much bigger than George W. Bush in 2000. I remember in 2000, George W. Bush, while they were fighting over, after the election, and there was all this fighting and courtroom challenges, George W. Bush grew this big blister on his face, and you can tell that he called up his father. He says, I don't want to be president this bad. You know I lost. You know I lost the popular vote. You know Jeb scrubbed black people from the ballots in Florida. If they do a real recount, I'll lose, which is what happened, but that was never reported. You know that George W. Bush said, it's not worth it to me to become president. And his father said, listen here, boy, this isn't about you. This isn't about whether or not you want to be president. Now sit back, shut up, and Jim Baker and Antonin Scalia are going to steal this for us. There are forces bigger than Donald Trump who will not accept his defeat, because trillions and trillions of dollars and millions of unborn babies are at stake. This is exactly what happens when a country is controlled by a coalition of greedy and stupid people, aka Republicans. It's a coalition of greedy and incredibly stupid people. And by the way, greedy, also stupid. It's stupid to be greedy. But look at how we've normalized Trump's behavior. Mitt Romney, the 2012 Republican nominee for president, says, I can't endorse Kamala Harris because I'm afraid physical harm will come to me and my family. And most of us read that in Atlantic Magazine and say, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that. When in modern American history has this ever happened? Where we just accept, it's been normalized that if you are a Republican who breaks with Donald Trump, you're going to have to hire security. If you're a prosecutor or a judge, a witness, or an election official. In Nevada, which is a key swing state, Washoe County's interim registrar of voters, Carrie Ann Burgess, announced she is taking a medical leave of absence because she can no longer handle the death threats. Washoe County includes Reno, Nevada, and is a key district if Trump hopes to patch together a win in Nevada. The Associated Press reports this morning her office has been under constant attack by election deniers since December of 2020. The Associated Press reports there's been a 38% increase in election workers quitting since Donald Trump lost in 2020. The Justice Department has already charged more than a dozen people with threatening the lives of election workers who are now installing bulletproof glass and panic buttons inside their offices around the country. Tammy Patrick is the program director for the National Association of Election Officials, and she tells the Associated Press, quote, people can only be pushed so far. Everyone has a breaking point, and unfortunately, there are some people who want to push the system to the brink. Unquote. There are some people who want to push the system to the brink. The plan: scare election officials, replace them with quacks, create confusion, get it to the Supreme Court so they can rule, the 6-3 Republican majority can then rule there is sufficient evidence to suggest massive voter fraud. Let the House of Representatives pick the president, and Donald Trump wins. That is the plan, unless you get to work right now and give Kamala Harris and the Democrats a blue tsunami. And it doesn't end after the blue tsunami. Stop thinking you can kick back, smoke a joint, have a beer, order in, and relax. Democracies die. Every single democracy has died. Some disturbing news about Kyle Rittenhouse. Yes, there's even more disturbing news about Kyle Rittenhouse, who, back in 2020, at the tender age of 17, brought an AR-15 to a Black Lives Matter protest, and then, fearing for his life, killed 2 men and injured another. Rittenhouse was acquitted back in 2021 and then immediately flew down to Mar-a-Lago, where he had a conversation with Donald Trump. Trump, after their meeting, called him, quote, a really good young guy, unquote. Kyle Rittenhouse has become the darling of the far right, a hero. Why? Because he killed 2 and injured 1 Black Lives Matter protesters. Give me one analog. Tell me one Black Lives Matter protester who did what Kyle Rittenhouse did. I'm waiting. David Hancock, who was hired to be Rittenhouse's spokesman, Rittenhouse wrote a book, and Dave Hancock was brought in as his spokesman. Dave Hancock now reveals in a new 90-minute documentary entitled The Trials of Kyle Rittenhouse, Dave Hancock says that he has now learned things about Rittenhouse in the lead up to the shootings that make him sorry he had any association with Kyle Rittenhouse. According to this new documentary, Rittenhouse sent out text just hours before the killings saying he planned to effing murder shoplifters outside a Kenosha pharmacy. I'm saying effing, he said the whole word. Whole word. Dave Hancock, Rittenhouse's former spokesman, said he no longer believes Rittenhouse acted in self-defense. Really? According to this new documentary, Rittenhouse spent days patrolling the streets, brandishing guns, looking for a fight, and even borrowing the security uniforms of friends. Rittenhouse now faces a wrongful death civil lawsuit. Much of discovery in that civil lawsuit ended up as part of this documentary. The Guardian reports that Rittenhouse announced he would not be supporting Donald Trump for president, but after he was inundated with attacks on social media, Rittenhouse caved in and said, you know what, on second thought, I'm endorsing Donald Trump for president. On Saturday, vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance spoke before a group of apostolic Christians in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. The event was organized by Lance Wallnau, one of the leading voices of the new apostolic reformation movement, which calls upon Christians to seize the 7 mountains of society. I've talked about this. Among those 7 mountains are government. Wallnau is unapologetically a Christian supremacist who urges his followers, do not back down from the idea that America is a Christian nation. Wallnau introduced J.D. Vance, but Vance spoke with Pastor Jason Howard about addiction. Wallnau is hosting a tour of swing states, urging Christians to vote for Donald Trump, calling him God's chosen one. Wallnau has also referred to Kamala Harris as, quote, a demon and a Jezebel. And we know what Jezebel is a euphemism for. Many of the insurrectionists on January 6 turned out to be part of the new apostolic reformation movement. And many of the leaders of the new apostolic reformation movement held Stop the Steal rallies while promoting the stolen election lie in the lead up to the storming of the Capitol. Followers of the new apostolic reformation movement often carry an appeal to heaven flag, otherwise known as the pine tree flag. The pine tree symbolizes violent resistance to oppression, and it dates back to colonists in 1772 standing up to British authority in New Hampshire during what was later called the Pine Tree Riot. Many believe, especially followers of the new apostolic reformation, they believe the Pine Tree Riot gave the colonists the courage to stage the Boston Tea Party. Yes, the Boston Tea Party, a real act of courage. Dress up like Native Americans, throw British tea into the harbor, and the Brits blame it all on the Native Americans. Yes, very courageous. Very courageous. Sam Adams. By the way, that was about more taxes, but that's another. The Boston Tea Party was about taxing British tea as much as they taxed Dutch tea. They were calling for more taxes, not fewer taxes. But why would you expect anybody who's a member of the Tea Party to know American history? An appeal to heaven flag is one of just 3 flags standing outside Speaker Mike Johnson's office. Now think about this for 1 second. Speaker Mike Johnson has 3 flags outside his office. He is a follower of the new apostolic reformation. That's why he has an appeal to heaven flag outside his office. There are 3 flags. Look at this, 3 flags outside his office. You have the American flag, the Louisiana state flag, and the only other flag, an Appeal to Heaven flag. An Appeal to Heaven flag that, along with the Confederate flag, was carried into our nation's capital by insurrectionists on January 6. A flag that proclaims unabashedly that America is a Christian nation. A flag that unabashedly proclaims violence in the name of the Lord is always justified. That's outside the Speaker's office. World-class election denier, Mike Johnson, who wrote the amicus brief in 2020, convinced about 140 Republican members of Congress to sign an amicus brief that went before the Supreme Court calling Joe Biden's wins in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan illegitimate. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, who last week said he will not vote to certify the election for Kamala Harris unless he's convinced the election was on the up and up. How are we doing on time? Hezbollah confirmed over the weekend that its Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah was killed in Beirut during an Israeli airstrike. Afterwards, Israel, for the first time in 2 decades, conducted airstrikes over the center of Beirut, killing 3 leaders of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. You know, it's almost like Netanyahu doesn't want to negotiate. Lebanon says Israel's recent bombing campaign has displaced 1 million people. The Lebanese Health Ministry says 1,000 have been killed during the past week. For the first time since World War II, we are now hearing the phrase total war. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the airstrikes will continue until 60,000 Israelis living along the Lebanon border can return to their homes. They were ordered to leave when Hezbollah began shelling northern Israel immediately after the October 7th attack conducted by Hamas. Hezbollah launched the year-long attacks in solidarity with the people of Gaza. Hezbollah, which takes its orders and gets its money from Iran, according to the Western press, was reportedly instructed to begin a bombing campaign along northern Israel's border right after October 7th to force Benjamin Netanyahu into a ceasefire for fear of having to fight a war on 2 fronts. Israel and Hezbollah have engaged in minor skirmishes since October 7th, and now, almost a year later, Israel reportedly feels total war in Gaza has eliminated enough of a threat from Hamas that they can now focus on Hezbollah. Hezbollah is generally believed to have been a much bigger military threat to Israel than Hamas ever was. Israel and Hezbollah fought a war in 2006 that many felt left Israel humiliated. But now the deaths of so many senior Hezbollah commanders, including the leader, Hassan Nasrallah, calls into question Hezbollah's viability as a stabilizing and or destabilizing force in both Lebanon and Syria. There were reports of celebrations in parts of Lebanon and Syria after the killing of Hezbollah's leader was announced. Hezbollah has worked in tandem with Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad during his country's 12-year civil war, where Hezbollah has been accused of committing war crimes. But as one Lebanese official who asked to remain anonymous said over the weekend, 2 things can be true. Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, can be a force of evil in this world, and so can Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And I'll leave it at that. 2 things can be true. Hassan Nasrallah, who headed Hezbollah can be a force of evil in this world, and so can Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. On Friday, New York City Mayor Eric Adams pled not guilty in a Manhattan courtroom after being indicted on 5 counts, including bribery, fraud, and soliciting illegal foreign campaign donations. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, after the indictment, immediately issued this statement.
This is former Mayor Rudy Giuliani. I just want to take a moment to express my disgust at the indictment today of New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Bribery, wire fraud, foreign donations. What a disgrace for a sitting mayor to engage in this kind of corrupt behavior. Only an ex-mayor should behave in this manner. When I was mayor, I was guilty of nothing other than fueling racism, encouraging random profiling, defending reckless police shootings of blacks and Puerto Ricans, and so on. All perfectly legal. Only after I was New York City mayor and no longer responsible for the well-being of its citizens did I dive headfirst into a miasma of corruption and malfeasance. When I got indicted for fraudulently attempting to overturn elections in Arizona and Georgia, it was as an ex-mayor. When I got sued and convicted for terrorizing and lying about innocent Georgia election workers, it was as an ex-mayor. When I got eliminated for singing Bad to the Bone in a rooster costume on The Masked Singer, it was as, you guessed it, an ex-mayor. Just today, I was disbarred in Washington, D.C., as I was in New York City. But I did it the right way. So, Mayor Adams, the next time you want to engage in despicable, illegal acts, have the patience and the dignity to do what I did and wait until the split second you no longer serve the people of New York City. Thank you, and 9/11.
I don't know now. I have a friend, Robert Smigel, and he sends me clips to play on the show. He sent that to me. Smigel said, "This is Rudy Giuliani. I found the clip." It sounds like Rudy. But Smigel has tricked me before. So full disclosure, I can't say for certain. That that was Rudy Giuliani. But I can't say for certain that I don't think I can trust Robert Smigel anymore. I don't trust Robert Smigel. I don't think he's looking out after my best interests. This Tuesday night, it's a battle between good and evil as Coach Waltz takes on race-baiting, opportunistic infection J.D. Vance. Join me and my friends as we watch the vice presidential debate and discuss it afterwards. Doors open at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Debate starts at 9 p.m. Eastern. Discussion follows. I'll be recording an audio version of my podcast. We're not doing this for YouTube. This is a Zoom meeting, and then we'll edit the audio for a podcast. I look forward to chatting with you. No cameras, just me. I'm only interested in what you have to say. So we'll talk in the chat room during the debate. You can ask questions in the Q&A. And then afterwards, if you want to talk, raise your hand to speak, and I will only hear your voice. I don't want to know what you look like. One of the reasons these watch parties are more successful than the ones I had 2 years ago is you can come unclothed. The camera won't be on. When people talk, I just want to focus on what you have to say. So there's a $3 registration fee. I know some people don't have the money, but Zoom webinars aren't free, and $3 will keep the MAGA morons out. We have limited space. And if we do more events and there isn't enough, if I see that there isn't enough space, then I will buy more room. Your registration fee is secured by PayPal. You don't have to join PayPal. PayPal accepts all major credit cards for me, processes the payments for me. I hope to see you Tuesday, October 1st. That would be tomorrow, October 1st, 2024. Doors open at 8:30. If you would like the registration link, it's in the description of this show, or you can go to shopdavidfeldman.com or davidfeldman.com. Again, the description is in the episode of this show. The description is in the episode. The link, the registration link, is in the description of the show. And if you register, you will get 3 emails to make sure you don't lose the registration. This is the mop-up for September 30th, 2024. And how many days left before the election? What is going on here? Oh, this is my... if I want this to be a rerun, I press a button, and this show becomes a rerun, but that's not the one I wanted to press. You're now watching a rerun of a previous episode of The David Feldman Show. Okay, now we've gone back to real time. Where is it? How many more days left? 36 days. What did I say, 35? 36 days, 16 hours, and 4 minutes before Kamala Harris gets elected president. Please subscribe to my channel. Please subscribe to my newsletter. Please hit the like button so I remain in your feed. Leave a comment. I read all your comments. And of course, share this episode. That's the best way to help. The only reason you're watching the show is because somebody shared this with you. So if you enjoy any of this, if you enjoy Robert Smigel once again humiliating me, calling my credibility into question, please share this episode with your friends. Okay. This is where things stand as of this morning, as Election Day is upon us. Kamala Harris continues to hold a 3-point lead in the national polling averages. Let's go to the blue wall. Not to alarm you, but the race is now tightening in Pennsylvania and Michigan. Is it cause for concern? I'm always concerned. According to the polling averages, Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump by 1 percentage point in Pennsylvania. It's tightening in Pennsylvania. This is where both Trump and Harris will be fighting it out. It comes down to Pennsylvania. She can lose, when you look at the blue wall, she can lose Michigan or Wisconsin and swap either one out with North Carolina or Georgia. But Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes, much harder to replace, okay? Georgia, North Carolina, 16 electoral votes. They will not replace Pennsylvania's 19. So she then has to pick up, if she loses Pennsylvania, she has to pick up either North Carolina or Georgia, and then she has to repeat what Joe Biden did in 2020, and that is win both Arizona and Nevada. It's easier to just win Pennsylvania, and Trump wants to keep her fighting in Pennsylvania, because if she has to fight in Pennsylvania, then she can't open up the map and take it to Florida, Iowa, and Texas. The averages now show her leading by 2 percentage points in Michigan and Wisconsin. Now, I mentioned this on the last show. According to a new Associated poll, a majority of Republicans say their most trusted source of news is Donald Trump. More than Fox News, more than any other newspaper, it's Donald Trump. They get their news from Donald Trump. If Donald Trump says it, it has to be true. And now we see that Elon Musk, who controls Twitter, is now saying that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are shipping migrants across the border, making them citizens so they can cast ballots in the key battleground states. This is a massive lie. Elon Musk is a reckless liar. The New York Times reported last week that 1/3 of his Twitter posts spread misinformation. Now, most Americans don't go to Twitter. But Twitter, in many ways, shapes the narrative because it's where most of the pundits, most reporters and politicians go to shape their narrative. Elon Musk is a major threat to our democracy. I also told you about a new poll that shows a majority of Republicans think immigrants and people who aren't white have a negative effect on America. That's what a majority of Republicans believe, okay? Donald Trump is playing to that base. I don't know how you win playing to this base. I don't know how he does it, but he's not letting up. He's talking about he was in Wisconsin on Saturday, and he spread the lie of a violent migrant crime wave. Nothing could be further from the truth. You're less likely to find crime committed by migrants for obvious reasons. On Sunday, Donald Trump, convicted felon, called for, quote, one real tough, nasty, and violent day of police retaliation in order to eradicate crime immediately. This is according to Politico. Trump said, we just need like one rough hour, and I mean real rough. The word will get out, and it will end immediately. You know, it will end immediately. Somebody should refer him to what's going on in Lebanon and Gaza. Have one really rough, nasty, and violent day in Gaza, Lebanon, or here in America, and see how that puts an end to whatever is ailing you. The FBI reports that crime in 2023 dropped at its sharpest decline ever. It spiked when Trump was president. Homicides, violent crime spiked in 2020. It's been going down ever since Biden became president in 2023, the sharpest decline on record. But Donald Trump says the FBI, deep dark state, can't trust the FBI. You can only trust the local police. That's what the Republicans believe. You can only trust the local police. You can't trust the FBI. They lock up white-collar criminals. FBI agents have accounting degrees and law degrees. Trust the local police because they shoot unarmed black men in the back. That's why the Republicans support the local police. But the FBI, deep dark state. Trump spoke in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is a key swing district. He won Erie, Pennsylvania in 2016. He lost it in 2020. Many, and I think the New York Times, I think I read this in the New York Times, Erie, Pennsylvania is considered the bellwether district of Pennsylvania. If you want to know how Pennsylvania goes, they say, follow Erie, Pennsylvania. In Erie, Trump lied, called migrants savage criminals. Migrants, savage criminals, lied, told the crowd that Kamala Harris, if she gets elected president, will flood America with, quote, 200 million immigrants. We have 350 million people living in this country. And he says Kamala Harris's plan is to flood America with 200 million immigrants. Remember earlier, J.D. Vance said we don't have enough children. Americans aren't making enough babies. That's the truth. We have a population implosion. But he's going to deport, he claims, 14 million immigrants. There are 14 million undocumented immigrants, and he's going to deport all of them, he says. And he lied and said, Trump lied, and he said Kamala Harris wants to legalize fentanyl. That, I think, is true. I think that's in the Democratic Party platform, to get all of America high on fentanyl. And he also said on Sunday, because he's pro-fracking in Pennsylvania, he says climate change is one of the greatest scams of all time. I thought it would be Donald Trump would be the greatest scam of all kind. Then Trump called Kamala Harris a mentally disabled person. Lindsey Graham was asked, do you approve of Donald Trump calling this? And this is what the Sunday shows were all about, the name calling. Do you approve of Donald Trump calling Kamala Harris mentally disabled? And Lindsey Graham joined other Republicans in saying, no, he should just stick with the issues. Well, if he talked about the issues, he can't win if he sticks to the issues. This is Stephen Chung, Donald Trump's communications director. He was asked if Donald Trump should be calling Kamala Harris mentally disabled. Stephen Chung said, I won't answer that. All I can tell you is Kamala Harris is unfit to serve as president. And if anybody knows about being unfit, it would be Stephen Chung, Donald Trump's communications director. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Don't forget, Debate Watch Party tomorrow night. Doors open at 8:30 p.m. Go to shopdavidfeldman.com for the registration link, or davidfeldmanshow.com, and or just look at the description in the show if you want to come. You meet really interesting people. Now, I've played some clips from the last debate watch party. This is Myron, and this is a clip from Myron. He was watching me outside Trump Tower last time during our debate watch party. And this is what my listener Myron had to say.
Kamala never had a job at McDonald's. Her resume talks about McDonald's. When I worked at the French fry counter, it was so tough, so hot. She didn't work there. She never worked at McDonald's. It was a lie.
Yeah, Myron's very concerned, and he'll be at the debate watch party. He thinks that Jim Comer, House Oversight Committee, should hold hearings into whether or not Kamala Harris worked at McDonald's. People are very concerned that she's lying about this. This is Evan. He is a gym teacher visiting, and he was standing outside. This is Evan. He's from Florida. Evan was standing outside Trump Tower, and here's what he said at our last debate watch party.
They're full-on vampires. You know they eat babies. That is not bullshit. It's true. It's not just the dogs and the cats. They're full-on vampires. And everybody still thinks I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy. They're full-on vampires. They love the taste of human flesh, and they drink human blood. They do vote for Trump. He will open up everybody's eyes, and they will stop pretending to be asleep. You know what they say, you can't wake people up that are pretending to be asleep, but I pray to God, please wake up even those who are pretending to be asleep with the irrefutable truth of what the worst people on this planet are really up to. They are really up to that. They're doing it. There are so many victims. There are so many victims.
That is Evan, and he'll be at the debate watch party. Big fan of Roseanne, by the way. I don't mean to embarrass Evan. Word for word, that is what Roseanne said to Tucker Carlson. Word for word, Evan likes to pinch lines from Roseanne. And here is Sandy. Also, he'll be at the debate watch party. And he's single, by the way.
Their policies are so wrong and so evil and so unfair. And there's only 3 reasons they want to do that. Number 1, they're incompetent. And I'm not sure that that's the reason. Number 2, they want it for the votes. And number 3, you know what that one is. We don't have to talk about that one.
By the way, your cameras will be off. I only turn the cameras on for people who aren't real. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Get to work for the Democratic Party. Seriously, get to work for the Democratic Party, because it's got to be a landslide, and we've got 36 days until the election. Get to work, please. If you liked this episode, please share it, hit the like button. Please come to the debate watch party. Thank you to Mila and Bob in the chat room. And what else? Another show tomorrow morning at 2:30 a.m. and then the debate watch party. Thank you for putting up with me. Hang on for 1 second. How do I stop? Jane, how do I make this stop? Jane, make it stop. Here we go. I can't. Can I? Oh, there we go. It just turned into a Twilight episode where I was going to be live streaming for the rest of my life. Goodbye.